Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. On today's show, we're going to have a conversation about realtors and about becoming investors and all of the topics around real estate, and from a guy who's done it a few times. So with that, Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Josh. That's a real pleasure to be here, my friend.
Yeah. So let's start with this. Where the heck are you guys located? Like, where's home for you?
So I'm sitting in my office in beautiful Southern Oregon. We're just over the border from California, so we're Medford, Ashland markets. Um, yeah, so it's a great area.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So we meet in a coffee shop over in Southern Oregon, and we're just hanging out, and we're like, hey, who are you and what do you do? How do you typically
Good.
respond?
How do I answer that? So I run one of the largest real estate companies in Oregon. We're do a billion four in business this year. We have 225 agents, just re-ranked in the Real Trends Top 500. So that's one of the top 500 companies in America for real estate transactions, and we're in a population base of about 80,000. So we're competing with companies in LA and New York and Atlanta and Chicago and everywhere else. And we're in a tiny little town. So that's kind of my synopsis of what I do.
Yeah.
Manage this crew.
Awesome. How large is that crew?
225. We're all brokers in Oregon, so 225 brokers.
Okay. Awesome. Is there a specific focus that you guys do, and are there things that you're like, there's no way we will do this, right?
hmm No, we're kind of we do a lot. I mean, we're definitely got some big players when it comes to the investment world. So we have some investors that are coming in and buying lots of properties, and we have a great commercial department here. So we work a lot on commercial. We have a huge residential department. We sold 3,000 properties last year. So we're touching a lot. Doing a lot of things.
Okay. So since we're gonna have coffee together and we're hanging out, I go, man, how'd you get started? That sounds like managing and running a group of 225 people. That's a pretty big team and an organization. Like, how'd you get
Yeah.
started?
So I'm a college dropout. I dropped out of college at 19 and got my real estate license. My buddy talked me into getting my license. He didn't finish, but I finished, and I was working at a lumber mill at the time. So I quit that job and dropped out of college and got my license. First 6 months, like a lot of agents, I struggled, but after that first 6 months, I got my legs under me, and I took 150 listings out of my next 12-month period. Got listed in top 1% of agents nationwide, and then opened my first company at 24, grew that to 17 offices in Oregon. And then I sold that in '06, luckily, before the market crashed.
Yes.
And then I took some time and I spoke for NAR for 10 years, and wrote a couple books. And then I got recruited to come down here to Southern Oregon to help rebuild this company down here. When I got here, we had 39 agents, and now, like I say, we've grown it.
So, all right. So first year,
Yeah.
what was the difference between the first 6 months of struggle? Because you like
hmm
you kind of brushed over this. I got my legs under me, and then I took
Yeah.
on 100 listings, right?
Right. Yeah. There's a
that's
big stretch there, right?
that's a big stretch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was
Well,
the pivot? Like what changed?
it's a good question. So the pivot for me was, desperation creates inspiration kind of thing. So I modeled the top producers that every top producer I could find. So I read all the books. Back then we didn't have podcasts. I attended live seminars, listened to all the tapes, and I understood that I couldn't exactly model everybody, and that's a kind of a bad thing to even try to do. I'm not going to be Josh. I'm not going to be some other person, but I can take a couple ideas from Josh, a couple ideas from Brian, a couple ideas from him, Tom, or whoever, and put those together into my own system. So what my system ended up being was 80% I knew was going to come from my sphere, but I was 19 and nobody in my sphere is buying or selling. So I says, well, what else can I do other than that until my sphere grows up? So I focused a lot on for sale by owners. I focused on expired listings. I focused on farming. And I did some things that were cutting edge at the time. I created the first team, one of the first teams in the country, really. Hired an assistant. One of the things we did, we took the entire county database, which at that time was microfiche, wasn't computer database then. So I bought a microfiche machine and a 356K computer, which cost $3,000 at the time. It's $1989, or no, $1990. And I had an assistant transcribe all that data into one of the first Excel spreadsheets you could buy. And we transcribed 68,000 records. We computerized the county database before the county computerized their own
Wow.
database. And then we did you're talking about trying to find deals. We did one of the first mail merges. I guarantee you one of the first mail merges in our market area by a mile, probably 10 years ahead of it. And we started doing 8,000 pieces of mail a month. And we absolutely crushed the market that way.
Wow. What did an assistant in 1990? What was it per hour? Because I'm
Hour.
sure that took hours and hours and hours to do.
Oh my God, yeah. I don't even remember what we were paying. I think it was like $7 an hour or something. It was
Yeah.
ridiculously inexpensive.
But you heavily invested that. Now, for a guy, were you at the lumber mill? Were you like swinging axes and were you like wear big, suspenders and such like that? Like that's what I envisioned.
Well, I was. No, that's more out in the woods. But I was doing what's called pulling green chain, and that's basically taking lumber off a big chain that's coming down a conveyor belt and moving it into big bins, basically grading it by size and quality. Extremely physical work.
Yeah.
Very
So,
very hard.
so a guy, sorting wood and
Yep.
big toothpicks to,
Yep.
6 months of struggle,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
To then I'm going to invest heavily into a $3,000 computer back then. I'm going to have this vision to do this huge mail merge, hire someone. There's a mindset there that something happened in the mindset, something happened in your personal life that kind of sparked that or
Mhm.
that like gave you that kick in the butt for that. Like, what was that?
Well, it's a couple things. One of the things I stumbled into just by random accident was in the newspaper. There was once a year in the newspaper they would publish all the people that were losing their properties to the county because of failure to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And I looked at that list and I thought, these people still have like 60 or 90 days before the public auction. I'm going to physically write them a letter.
Yeah.
And I did. I wrote them all a letter, and I ended up getting a bunch of listings from it. I ended up buying some properties on the river for, get this, $1,200.
Nice.
I bought 2 lots on the river for $1,200. Ended up selling them for $10,000 immediately.
Yeah.
And so I was like, there is some gold here. If I could just figure out how to mine this how to mine at a bigger scale, then I can do this all year long, not just once a year. And that's exactly what kind of was the epiphany that I had is I got to do this at scale. So that was the trick.
So anytime we have a guest on and they say something that I don't know what it is or they use terminology, I just have to ask on behalf of my audience, right?
Yeah.
What is a newspaper?
What we used to read back in the day, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
It is crazy.
Newspapers, phone books, like that. As a real estate, I got my real estate license when I was 20, 21 years old. And literally, newspaper and phone book were some of my best friends.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would open up the white pages. Right?
Yeah, we had a reverse director. I was going to say, I think it was called Cole or something.
Yeah.
And I would open that thing up and go street by street. I could call everybody on a street and just go bam, 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 and made thousands of calls too.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember your first kind of cold call script?
Oh, yeah.
Let's hear it.
And my cold call script was, hey, my name is Remley. I'm with Century 21. I'm just curious if you're curious about your home value. And that was it. and they would be like, no, 90% of the time. But I would say I had a pretty good hit rate. I was probably, because I tracked it, I'd be about 1 out of every 20 would be yes, maybe.
Yeah.
So I would end up with a lot of CMAs that went nowhere. But when you're young and hungry, you can make it work.
Yeah. CMA is a competitive market analysis, right?
Yes,
So
that's right.
I just want to make sure audience and even myself just know terminology. So a 1 in 20 hit, that's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because back then there wasn't as much there wasn't what we call ISAs in the business. An ISA today is an internal sales agent who works for teams, and that's all they do. So if you're in some metro markets, homeowners are getting called constantly with ISA. So the hit rate is not going to be the same as it used to be, right?
Yeah.
So now, when we coach people, we're moving more into technology and, doing things that are more innovative today than, old-fashioned cold call.
Yeah. Did you have a rotary phone? Because that will really work your arm out.
No, it was a push button.
It was a push button. Okay, copy that.
but no Mojo dialers. Now they have dialer systems and everything. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah. Now people are sitting, on a recliner on their couch in their living room, and they're just making 100 calls a day. Yeah.
Exactly. Pound 'em through.
So as you're doing this, you went from, toothpick sorter to struggling real estate guy
Yep.
to you did your first couple deals and you had this epiphany to hiring teams, right? Like teams was like the turning point of your business,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
What were some of like for a new agent, let's say in today's world, what should an agent who's starting to get their legs under them, did some transactions, they got some cash, and they need
Yeah.
to make a hire. What's the first good hire for an independent, sales agent?
First hire definitely is an assistant. I mean, you're definitely gonna want an assistant. But I would say there's somebody that's in between hiring an assistant, which most people don't do, which is using what's called a TC. So a TC is a transaction coordinator. So there's now virtual transaction coordinators around the country too. So they come in and they kind of act as a virtual assistant to manage your transaction and all the little details. Most real estate agents are terrible at details. We're more people,
Yeah.
and we're salespeople. We're not detail oriented. So that person comes in and they make sure all the signatures are collected and inspections are ordered and all the little things. And you can do that on a per transaction basis, like 300 or 400 or 500 dollars a transaction. They'll handle that. Then you bring in an assistant. The mistake I'll tell you that a lot of agents make is they bring in an assistant and then make them a TC, which is a terrible use of their time. So you should never make your assistant a TC because you can virtualize a TC. That can be a virtual offhand. But an assistant should be doing 100% is helping you with lead generation and managing your current client database. I mean, that's what you should be doing.
Revenue producing activities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And they should become a profit center. When I'm coaching people on hiring an assistant, you got to look at it. This isn't a cost. This is an investment that will give you a rate of return. There's going to be an ROI on your assistant, and it's actually measurable if you start to really think about it. So looking at that from a whole different perspective, like when I hire somebody and I'm paying them $50,000 a year, then they should be making me $200,000 or $300,000 a year if I do it right.
Yeah. Huh. That is so awesome. I love that because I think the mindset, I'm going to hire an assistant and they're just going to do all the shit I don't want to do, right?
Exactly.
They're going to do the transactions, they're going to do the paperwork, and thank God all I have to do is focus on sales. But that's a
Right.
limited thinking because you could duplicate yourself having someone sit next to you. You could turn them into a sales machine.
Yeah. Well, and what it happens is if that's all you're doing, then just more burden falls on your shoulders because now I've got to produce another million or two in sales to pay for them. And that kind of mindset is where people burn out really fast.
Yeah.
What you got to be looking at is how can these people be a profit center that adds to my bottom line, but also take some of the burden off me. I always tell agents, and I've had some incredible success stories with this. I have a team that worked for me, a couple of gals just crushing it, doing 20, $30 million in business. But they were also like most people that are doing 20 or $30 million a year, really overworked. And they were doing it all themselves and didn't have an assistant. And I told them, what you have to understand is that, you have to give up control to increase capacity. That's the hardest thing for top producing agents is giving up levels of control. The more you can let go of control, the greater your capacity will become because we're all limited by a certain capacity. Your capacity could be, you might be capable of doing $10 million with no assistant, no TC. My capacity might be, I can only do 5. That's just who I am. Everybody has a different capacity. So, but once you hit that limit, you physically can't do it more without sacrificing something, either your life, style, your kids, your family, whatever, your health, something's going to go wrong. So
Yeah.
then I got to bring in somebody else to give me more capacity.
I'm going to get a little personal with you.
Yeah, do it.
For me, I hit my capacity. I was working a full time job. I'm married with a new kid, right?
Yeah.
And then I was building a tech company, and I had a fitness technology company, and I had like a couple hundred clients that I was managing. Burnt out. I wound up in the hospital. I thought I was having an ulcer or something like that, right? Like I thought I was dying.
Yeah.
Um, I hit my capacity probably far before that happened, and I saw
Mm-hmm.
all the signs. But have you ever an experience where you hit your own capacity, and what did that look like?
Well, it's an interesting story, actually. Uh, I've definitely hit capacity at different points in my life. The most recent time is I started having what I thought were heart attacks. My chest would start pounding. and I go into a full blown, what felt like was cardiac arrest. I mean, I thought I went to the hospital 3 times,
No kidding.
got fully hooked up to EKG machines, went through a complete stress test. I mean, every kind of scan that can be done on my heart, because I was convinced it was my heart. I could feel my heart. I could feel where it was in my heart that was going wrong. I took the cardiologist. There is something wrong. I mean, I can feel it. So anyway, went through every test known to man. He's like, dude, there's nothing freaking wrong with your heart. Your heart is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So my doctor said, this is a panic disorder. You're having a panic attack disorder. And I said, bullshit. I've ran massive companies, billion-dollar companies. There is no freaking way I'm having panic
Not
attacks.
this guy.
Not me. I deal with stress when I am the stress machine. I'm an
Yeah.
ice machine.
I'm
I
the
don't,
man.
not me. So anyway, but they were right. It was panic attacks. And so, I had to find ways to relieve stress. And one of the ways was, having a great team around me that started to relieve a lot of that pressure and starting to work less, and give yourself permission to, recharge. Rest and recharge is underrated.
It's underrated. Someone told me this is you could only grow to the capacity of which you can recover.
Mm.
And I never, until recent, I'm 40 years old and I'm just freaking figuring this out now. But like, I never, because I'm the man, right? I never needed to rest. I never needed to recharge. I never, until I started blowing up all my kids, or I started like, I wound up in the hospital, or these kind of things. And, coaches, counselors, therapists were like, hey, Josh, what's your rest look like? What do you mean? I'm building multiple companies. There's no rest.
24/7.
Your body will shut down,
Yeah.
or you'll have panic attacks. So I really appreciate you sharing this story. Do you mind if we dig into this a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
All right.
sure.
I mean, I'm putting you on the spot. We're recorded,
No,
so
yeah.
you might as well.
I'm an
So
open book.
I thought, because I was a pretty tough guy growing up, I thought panic attacks and depression and panic in general was that of weak people until it
100%.
happened to me. And
Mm-hmm.
when it happened to me, I thought it was everything but panic. I thought it was everything but depression and all that. And I realized that I'm not as tough as I was. And actually, for me, the toughest thing was asking for help. Right? What
Yeah.
did you do once you started to discover that you're not He-Man or
Right.
Superman, whatever whatever it is, and that you had to get help? And what did help look like for you?
Good question. So it took me a long time, like 2 years before I came to grips with it.
You're
I mean,
stubborn too, aren't you?
I'm super stubborn. I mean, I went to the doctor multiple times and said, I want every blood test known to man because there is something physically wrong with me that I feel like this. Anyway, when I finally got past that, um, I just decided that I had to, start to peel away some of the stress. So for me, it was about finding ways to peel away. But I will tell you the number one thing that controlled the stress for me is because there's only so much you can take away when you're still performing at a high level, right? You're still going to have some level of stress.
Yeah.
So the number one thing that changed for me was I committed myself to working out twice a day. And I work out twice a day religiously. And it was the number one thing.
Twice a day?
Twice a day, 45 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes at night, every single night. And that was the thing that transformed my panic attacks. I quickly stopped having it. There was an interim period when I did CBD, that kind of thing helped.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't really take the edge off. And I did get prescribed medication from the doctor, like anti-anxiety stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't like the way it personally, for me, I know it works for a lot of people, but for me, I didn't like the way I didn't like the way I felt mentally. I didn't feel as sharp mentally.
Yeah.
So I feel like in my day to day, I got to be super sharp and on. So CBD worked, it took the edge off, but really what solved it was exercise twice.
Yeah. Are you shredded? Let's see those muscles.
No, I'm not really shredded. Remember, it's 80% diet, and I still haven't got that figured out. I got some muscle, but it's hidden under a couple layers of fat.
Copy that. You know what's funny? I'm a stubborn guy too, right? Like I'm like, no, I could push through, and like I'm the kind of guy who I'll go to the doctor, for 2 years. No, doctor, you're wrong. It's my heart. I want a transplant. Where could I sign up? Give me a new heart. Get me back in the game. I wanted to play. Until I crashed. Did you ever have a crash moment where it was just like forced to go, I surrender and I need help.
I think it was, well, probably the third time I was in the hospital.
Third time's a charm, baby.
I'm hooked up to all these machines, and I'm like, it's my heart. And they're like, it's not your heart. That was probably it for me,
Yeah.
and kind of a funny story too during the pandemic. My wife and I rewatched The Sopranos, right? So
Great show.
so anybody that's suffering from any kind of panic attack disorder, or you're having panic attacks regularly, go back and watch every episode of Sopranos, because you forget that in the first episode of The Sopranos, what happens? Tony Soprano has a panic attack.
And he's
And
in the therapist.
well, yeah, that's the reason he went to the therapist. He thought
Yeah.
he was having a heart attack. He's taken to the hospital multiple times. And you think, oh, I kind of like, I made me feel better. Like, oh, here's the toughest guy, on TV. He's having panic attacks. I guess it's okay for me to have one. My wife looks at me like, see, Tony Soprano's having panic attacks too. So
Yeah.
anyway, kind of funny.
That's a great show, by the way. Like
Right.
I loved that series. And did you watch the what was it? The one before they
Yes.
did
Yeah.
you watch that with the young, how
Yeah.
Tony grew up?
Yes.
What was your thoughts of that?
I didn't love it. I mean, I liked his kid playing him was cool,
Yeah.
and I thought he did a great job. But I thought the story wasn't that strong. It wasn't more. It should have been more about the family, and they kind of went in the side.
Yeah. I think the only thing I liked about the whatever that was is you got to learn about the uncle and his
Yeah.
story and all that,
Yes.
or you got to learn about like why there was certain like fights in the family. Oh,
Yes.
all right. Sorry. Back to deals.
Yeah.
So I love talking about mindset, and I love talking about because behind every deal maker or behind every deal is a deal maker. And
Mm.
when I've interviewed 1,000 deal makers, and what I find is there's always internal struggles that once fixed internally, massive growth externally.
Mm.
For me, a broken man breaks things, right? Once I started to get my mindset right, things started to work. No shit, right?
Yeah.
Well, in your journey, if you could look back in your journey, what were some major mindset milestones that you think that you started to overcome?
Well, first when I was younger, I came from a family that my mom and dad divorced, which is common for everybody, right? But neither one of my parents owned a home, and they didn't own a home until I became a realtor years later, right? So, and then when I actually started to look at this growing up, neither one of them owned a home, but also their parents didn't own a home, and their parents didn't own a home. I mean, generational poverty, basically. And so for me, when I got in the real estate business in 19, I bought a house within, a few months. Of course, you're going to buy a house. So I was the first person in my family in generations that owned a home. So that alone was kind of a breakthrough event, just that
Yeah.
you could buy a house, right? And then I quickly looked around at the most successful, wealthiest people that were in my circle, and every one of them was, had their wealth was pretty much centered in real estate. So I knew quickly that if I'm going to actually become, have generational wealth myself, and people talk about generational wealth as kind of the new thing now, but it starts with you got to be wealthy, number one, and then you
Yeah.
can get to generational wealth. And just for me to kind of break through and have financial security, I knew I started having to buy. I would need to start buying real estate. What I think the unrealistic expectation of young people is that I'm going to start buying real estate and instantly have cash flow and instantly have this kind of Instagram lifestyle, which is just not true. I mean, I am financially free today because I made investments 30 years ago that are now paid off.
Yeah.
So it takes time, and that's just part of the process.
Yeah. When you look at 225 brokers and people that working with you, what do you look for in terms of capacity, right? Everybody has different capacity, and the goal is to break through their capacity by building systems, processes, and people kind of around. But what are some for top producers? How do some top producers have a higher capacity? Like what are some key characteristics where some people have higher capacity? What are some things that you see patterns?
The number one thing that top producers have, in my opinion, that non-top producers are lacking is high EQ, emotional intelligence. So you can have, and I've had this, I've hired literal PhDs that have come to me as realtors. They have a PhD from Harvard or, wherever, some high level PhD, Stanford. And yet they can't sell their way out of a wet paper bag. They are intellectually smart, but they have low emotional intelligence. So the highest performing people like me that are college dropouts, that are still high performers, in universally, every top producer has high emotional intelligence, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a thing. And the great book, Daniel Goleman, which is the book Emotional Intelligence, which everyone should read. You got to think about that and say, if I'm producing at like 5 or 6 or 7 or $8 million a year, but I want to get to 30, people think about, oh, I got to have this tech or that tech or this, that, and the other. Let's start with emotional intelligence and say, how can I become more emotionally intelligent? Number one, because that's the number one trait.
Give me an idea. So I want to increase my emotional intelligence. I'll
Right.
read the book with you, right? And we'll
Yeah,
go
yeah.
out to coffee again. I read the book and I bring my notes back. But like, what would you say is like maybe, hey Josh, here's a quick tip on how to build your emotional intelligence to increase your capacity.
I would say number one is you're investing in relationships, not market share, right? So for me and you, like if you were somebody that I had met, like we're meeting now, and I said, Josh, what do you want to do in the next 12 months? I mean, aspirationally, what is it you want to get done? And we're not talking about real estate. I'm just talking about you as a human being. What do you want to get done with your life? I mean, where do you want to go? Where do you want to travel? What do you want to do with your business? I'm going to try to engage you and ask you questions that are meaningful to you. But I'm doing this in a real authentic way because I really want to know. Now, when I know this information, what do I do with it? Right? I got to do something with this. Right?
Yeah.
So then I take this information back and I put it somewhere. I put it in my CRM or my database. But I'm not just doing it because I know I've been told to do that. I'm actually looking at this and saying, now, how can I help Josh with at least one of the goals that he told me he has set for himself, one of his aspirational goals? He wants to go ride, a bike to wherever. He wants to, change his diet. He wants to exercise more. He wants to go on this vacation, whatever. Now I'm going to really focus in on how can I help Josh? And that is taking my relationship skills to a whole nother level. And we are working on more of I'm trying to move relationships from here, down the ladder all the way up to the top of the ladder. I want Josh to think of me as a friend
Yeah.
and somebody that really cares about him. And when I do that, and here's what happens with the top producers, people that are 50, and I coach some of these people 50, 70, 80, $100 million in business. And they say, hey, I just closed a transaction today. They never say, I just closed a client or a customer. They say, I just sold my buddy a house. I just listed my friend's house. And everybody that's in their sphere is their friend, is their buddy, because that's how they look at relationships. And that's the whole different mindset. When you're looking at people as a notch on your belt or just a customer or a client, that's the first red flag I see with unsustainable teams, unsustainable performance. These kind of flashes in the pan that will not last. The top performers always are relationship based.
Yeah. That is great advice right there, Jim. Let me ask you a question, man. I care about you, and I want to know aspirationally for you, Jim, where do you see yourself in 12 months? What things do you want to accomplish?
That's a great question.
That's a
See,
great question, right?
just by saying it, I feel better. I want to start talking, right? I want to
Yeah.
know what's going on, right? So
Yeah.
it's a great question.
Yeah.
You ask me
So,
more.
yeah. So what
What
do you
is the
want to,
answer?
yeah. What's your answer?
Well, I will tell you, my wife and I, well, first of all, years ago, I bought an RV park. 17 years ago, I bought an RV park.
Yes. I love RVs.
Yes. So I ran this RV. There's a great story about that RV park. But then recently, a year ago, we had an opportunity to buy another one. So we bought another RV park. And so for us, we're getting these RV parks styled in, and I'm kind of now passionate about the RV park kind of world. And I'm, our goal for me, maybe not in the next 12 months, but the next 24 months is probably to buy another one. And just keep kind of building that little empire of RV parks. We enjoy it.
I have a buddy. They help buy and sell RV parks.
Oh,
So
perfect.
I'll do an
Well, look at us.
introduction for you.
Perfect. Look at that. We got a win already.
Yes. All right. Cool. So I mean that's what we do. We love doing putting people in deals together. Do you have an RV yourself?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah,
What do you have? Tell me
absolutely.
about your RV.
Well, I've had a few over the years. Right now, my wife and I just have a little one. We've got a little retro one we bought during the pandemic. It's
Yeah.
24 feet. And we just, it's easy to tow and, it's just a fun little getaway to the coast and, little mountain trips and everything else.
Yeah, super cool. I have 3 kids and a dog. So when we just sold ours, but we had a 38-foot
Oh,
bunkhouse.
big one.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a Keystone Passport. It was super awesome. And we
Oh, yeah, yeah. I know.
renovated the whole thing. It was fun.
Yeah, nice.
But now we want either something drivable to make
Yeah.
it a little bit, because 38 foot is hard to pull on a bumper.
Long. It's really
It's
long.
long. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Back to deals.
Yeah.
So you're building this company. You actually got brought in to help build out this company. When you started with this company, there was 35 people, and now there's 225.
Yeah.
How in the world? So team building is obviously one of your strong suits. How do
Yeah.
you go? How do you go 10x in almost? I'm not good at math, but close. Your team. Like what are some of the things that you did?
Well, if you're one of the things I am passionate about, and another answer to your question is brokerage coaching. So I love helping brokers build companies, right? So it's something that I do a lot, and it's just a fun thing for me. But one of the key with building any real estate company is you got to look at yourself as like a professional coach in the professional coaching world. Like you're an NFL coach, you're a NBA coach / owner, and in that coaching ownership role, you're just like those coaches. Your number one thing that you do is to build the team through recruiting and retention, right? So you got to have a great bench, and your bench is going to be like the people that are first year, second year, third year agents. But then you got to have your starters, your rock stars, your groups that are going to come out there. You need special teams. It's a very good analogy for what we do. And the number one way that I've built this company is simply by recruiting and creating a culture of excellence where people want to be at this company. I call our company like from my day, the LA Lakers of real estate. I don't know if that would apply
Not so
today,
much
but
anymore.
not so much anymore. But of my day, the LA Lakers of real estate. And I wanted to have this incredible kind of experience for agents to come into. So that it's recruiting and retention is what it's all about. That's how you build a successful real estate company. But in order to recruit, in order to retain, you got to have a great company. It means you got to have great staff, great tech, great marketing, great branding, great training. There's a lot of things that underline that.
Yeah. When you started, you were with a big firm, Century 21. I remember your
Yeah,
cold call, right?
yeah, yeah.
So let's just say we're having coffee again. I read the book, Emotional Intelligence. I'm getting smarter, and you're coaching me. You're like, Josh, you got something. Let's increase your capacity though. And we hang out, and you're taking a look at what I'm doing. What are some things that make a good broker? This is funny. How do you not go broke as a broker? Like, what are some things that you would suggest for me as a broker trying to build my business?
As a brokerage owner,
Yeah.
well, the first thing I would do is you got to say, what is it in my market that's needed? And, there's got to be a niche. And if I say I'm just going to be another real estate broker in my market, that's boring. It's a me too kind of thing.
Mhm.
So that's just like I'm going to copycat every other broker. I want to say what's my niche, and if I'm in a big market, it's especially important to have like a niche. Like this is what I'm targeting. This is what I'm going to be number one in, and having something unique, not only for the marketplace, right, but also for the agents to buy into. So I'll give you a quick story around this real quick. We opened an office in Ashland, Oregon, which is just above us, and just literally over the border from California. And in doing that office, we went to every top producer in that market, the Ashland market, and we met with them. We said, "Hey, we're opening an office here. Can I tell you what our vision of the office is?" And let me tell you something. Vision of what you're trying to build is super important, and being able to communicate that vision to other people. People buy in other people's visions all the time. I mean, when you look at the biggest companies in the world, Steve Jobs had a vision, Disney had a vision. These visions are what people buy into. So we said, here's our vision. We want to build a office that's kind of different. It's like a coffee shop kind of experience. People come in, there's big screens, people can see what's happening with real estate and all these screens that are happening. People can grab a cup of coffee, they can sit down on couches, you just kind of chill out because it's kind of a touristy town. And the top producers were like, that's amazing. We want to be a part of that. So we recruited like 20 people before we even opened the doors. And it's a tiny space. It was like 1,200 square foot space. Most people working virtually, and it worked beautifully. Now we're in a big 4,000 square foot space, and we totally dominate the market with a 35% market share. But interestingly, our vision evolved over time. But having that vision is what we sold to. And I would encourage owners to say, if I'm going to sit down and ask you, Josh, what's the vision of your real estate company? Give me that in like a teaser, like a movie teaser. What makes you unique in the market? Why should I come to work for you?
Yeah.
That's more challenging to answer than most people have really given thought to.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what most brokerage owners are doing now, which is exact opposite of what you want to do. They will always go to commission, and they will say, "We've got the lowest commissions in here.
Yeah.
We're gonna give you all your money." So where does that lead? Now I'm giving away 95%, 97%, 98%, 100%. And now I'm literally living on a margin of 1% to 5%, and I'm going to go broke. That's the fastest way to go broke. You got to go to the exact opposite and say, how am I going to have so much value that people are going to come to work for me and be totally cool with paying whatever? I'm, a realistic number. So
Yeah.
I go on and on about that.
No, that's good. And so it shows that is how you compete with the big box brands, right? Is
Exactly.
sell the vision of what you're trying to do, what the value is to them, and why they want to be a part of this mission. And that's how you grew it from 35 people to 225.
Exactly.
100%. If I looked at, your the back of your baseball card, right? Your stats. Name some of the stats that you've accomplished in your career that you're pretty proud of. You said you did 1.4 bill in transactions. That's awesome. 3,000, residential deals. Like, what are some other stats that you're like, man, I'm really proud that me and my team has accomplished this?
The number one stat I think I'm most proud of, and I think what the ultimate measurement tool for every real estate brokerage owner should be, and what I coach to, is per agent productivity. This is where we should measure ourselves, because I can have 500 agents in dominated market, but if they're all doing one transaction, what does that really mean, right? And there's a lot of companies operating that way. That's their model. More power to them. That's not my model. I want to give people a place where they can excel and really achieve their goals. So one of the stats I'm most proud of is I have one of the highest production per agent production numbers in the country. Our agents are doing $6-7 million, depending on the year and the time of year, $6 to $7 million annually per agent in our company. Some more, some less, but that's kind of the average. And that's one of the highest averages in the country. I mean, it's a big number. And I actually am proud to say I'm actually coaching some of my brokerage coaching students that are up above $10 million per agent. So they push beyond where I'm at, and they're actually at $10-12 million per agent. So that's the goal for all of us, is to say, how can we push these numbers higher? Because that really proves the pudding, right? You can sell all the Kool-Aid you want, but if it's working, it's going to show up in your per agent productivity. If it's all just BS, then they're not going to sell anything.
How do you measure that? Like, what are some things that you look at? Are you looking at listings, closings? Like, what do you measure?
So we're only measuring closings. So we're measuring GCI. So we're saying what's closed and how many millions of dollars closed per agent per year.
GCI, what is that?
Gross closed income, gross commission.
Copy that. All right. So that's the thing that you measure per agent, and you take a look at who's producing.
Yep.
I know this might be a tough question, but like, all right, we go to coffee again. You're like, Josh, you were crushing it, but it looks like you're in a little slump. What's going on, right? We go out to coffee, I had a bad year, coach. And we take a look at it. What are some things when you see an agent's production dipping, in their life? Like, what are some things that you're going to ask me or coach me through? Like, what are your thoughts?
Those are great questions. I just had this whole conversation this morning on one of my coaching calls, but I call this the downward spiral, right?
Yeah.
So, and I tell agents this, and I tell them in a way that I want them to feel okay about it, because just like you and I experienced like anxiety, every single agent, whether, I don't care how big a producer or non-producer they are, every single agent will go through a downward spiral at some point in their career, right? So it's a matter of being self-aware enough to recognize when you're starting on that downward spiral, right? And so the question mark is, okay, what's involved in that downward spiral that I can recognize? So first is an attitude shift. Like my attitude, I'm coming into the office, I'm not looking for positives. I'm kind of always going to the negative. I'm not looking at solution. I'm always looking for problems. So attitude shift is first. Second shift, what will happen is a work habit shift. So now I'm not working as intently. I'm not as focused. I'm not as diligent. So my work habits start to shift, which leads and kind of simultaneous with a commitment shift. So when I do have a client, I'm not as committed as I used to be. I'm not giving the best service. It's not raving fan level service. which leads to a performance shift because if the client senses I'm not, as engaged, they're going to be not as engaged with me. So my performance kind of will suffer, and then my results will shift as well. So then I'll start to close less deals, take less listings. So that's kind of the downward spiral, right? So to break out of that, if I was sitting in and you were experiencing a downward spiral, and I say, Josh, it looks like you're in this, where do you see yourself? You feel like any of that makes sense, and you're gonna say, oh yeah, for sure, here's where I'm at. So now what are we gonna do about it, right? Mm-hmm. So my thing to reverse out of that is you gotta take some actions. One of the things you can do is to say, I would suggest you do something that excites you. So let's look at the whole real estate kind of plethora of things we could do. What do you want to do that excites you the most about this business? Let's get you focused on that. Let's do some goal setting, but not just goal setting. Let's create a plan of action every single day and create what we call our 5 non-negotiables. What are the 5 things you got to do every single day, whether you want to or not, that will help you win the day early? And then I always say the last thing is really important is let go of outcomes and just focus on output, because you can't control outcome. All you can do is focus on output, what you're doing every day. And by having that daily plan of action, that's what's going to, take you to that next level.
Let go of outcomes, focus on
output, what you're doing every day. And what you find is that when you start to have some wins and you start to have, good things happening, more good things happen. Momentum builds momentum.
Yeah. What are your 5 non-negotiables?
5 non-negotiables. So for me, exercising twice a day, absolutely first one has to happen.
Yeah.
Another one would be I've got to go big and go small every day. What does that mean? For my office, it means that I'm going to go big with a message that's going to touch everybody in the office, right? So that could be a video, could be an email that's going out, some big communication, right? And then I'm going to go small by touching somebody individually in the office and saying, hey, Josh, just, how you doing today? What's going on with you? Yeah. So that's going big and going small. I got to do that every day. Number 3, I'm going to probably take some time to look at my market stats and look at where we are strong, where we're weak, and probably take some action related to that. So for instance, if I notice that our listings are trending down, I'm going to look at what can I do strategically to help our listings get better. So that's 3rd. 4th for me is making 5 calls to my own agents. I know that kind of goes along with going small, but I consider retention as re-recruiting all the time. So I'm re-recruiting my own agents. And 5th, and probably the second to exercise for me, the most important thing is making outbound recruiting calls every day. So you got to be recruiting other people every single day. So it's either active recruiting or follow-up recruiting. So if you want to be a great brokerage leader, you have to lead from the front and do the things that you're telling your salespeople to do. So what we're telling our salespeople to do is get out there, make calls, text people, engage in conversations. Then they look at you and you're just sitting at your desk and you're not doing any of this. It's not okay. You got to do what you're telling them to do. So that means I'm on the phone. I'm prospecting just like they're prospecting, just in a different way. And that's their recruiting.
That's awesome, man. One of the things you mentioned is you had to break some family modeling in order to build towards generational wealth. And the first step of generational wealth is self-wealth, right?
Right. Yes, exactly.
When it comes to self-wealth, making it, keeping it, growing it, right, is important. What was the hardest challenge for you in self-wealth? Because one of the things you said even before recording is just like, you got to eat your own dog food, right? Like you mentioned that. When it comes to self-wealth, what are some key things that you focus on and that you teach other brokers?
Well, one of the simplest things that I learned really quickly, one of the first investments I made, I bought a house for $30,000 in 1989, if you can imagine.
Nice.
And when I bought it, I thought, oh, this is good. This is my first rental. I'm excited about buying it. So I buy it, and like a day or two after I bought it, the renter calls me and says, I have rats in this house. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'll get somebody over there to deal with the rats in the house. That's disgusting. I'll get that taken care of. So I get that fixed. And then a couple of days later, she says, the toilet's not flushing right. I need somebody over there. So I call the plumber out. She says, oh, a week later, there's something wrong with the roof, I think. It just was never ending kind of stream of calls. And I was like, I cannot deal with this. I'm just going to sell this property, man. So I turned around, I sold it for $35,000, took the $5,000, thought I was a win. But then I just dawned on me, I was like, my personal model is I'm not a flipper. It's not my model. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to flip. I'm a buy and hold forever kind of guy. So I was like, I've got to fix this. And the way I fixed it is I decided I've got to just hire a property manager and pay the 10% and never have to think about this again.
Yeah.
So the next time I bought a property, I found a local property manager, small company that I knew I could talk to and kind of not control, but have really strong conversations with. And I said, I'm going to give you every property I buy. And over the next like 5 years, I bought 70 properties and I put them all with him, and he grew and I grew, and I never had to deal with any of that stuff. And
Yeah.
that was the lesson for me. Like, I do not manage my own properties
Yeah.
ever.
I am so aligned with you on that. I am not a manager. I'm not a property manager. I'm not a manager, period. I'm more of a visionary leader. The idea of someone calling me about rats and phones and this and that or whatever,
It,
I'm calling it quits, dude. Like I'd sell everything, right? I'm out.
yep.
That's so good. But the modeling that I had grown up, I grew up on a construction site swinging hammers, right? Not the sharpest tool in the shed, digging footers in Florida heat, right? The hardest thing for me, and this was trained by my dad and his dad probably, and everybody for 1,000 generations, was keep it in house, do it yourself, right? This idea of farming out, releasing control
Yeah.
is terrifying,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
fight myself even recently. I was like, I need a fence. I could build that. And I brought out the shovels. I got all set up and I looked at it. I go, what the hell am I doing? I made a few phone calls. The fence is up. I paid someone to do it. It was brilliant, right? Like they did a
Right.
better job than I could do. That for me, that was hardest of the breaking the generational. I think it's like breaking the generational modeling to build generational wealth. Now, I assume you have kids if we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about
Yep.
generational wealth.
Four
Okay.
kids. Yep.
Copy that. What advice do you have for them? What age range? Give me an idea of age ranges.
I have 16 to 25.
Okay. Let's just say they listen to this one day and
Yeah.
we can leave a golden piece of wisdom for your kids about generational wealth. You think I could speak better doing this for a living, right? What piece of advice do you have for your kids?
Well, number one, buying real estate, obviously, buying a home as fast as possible. And I'm not. I believe in investing in things you control. I mean, that's what I believe in. So I don't. I've lost so much money in the stock market over the years. I am a an eternal optimist. I always vote for the underdog. So I'm the guy that bought. I bought Singer sewing machines. I bought Montgomery Ward stock. I bought Converse shoes because I just was nostalgic about it. I thought none of these companies can go bankrupt. They're just having a bad day. All of
Kmart.
them went bankrupt. All of them went to zero.
Yeah.
I lost so much money. And the lesson I learned from that is I need to control what I own in terms of my investing world. So I'm all in on real estate. So 90% of my wealth is in real estate. Yes, I've got some money in 401ks and things like that. But 90% of my wealth is in real estate, and that's what I would coach my kids to say. Do what you can control. Now, my oldest son, is a software engineer. I'm very proud of him. He went to OIT, Oregon Institute of Technology, and now has a great job. So he might be able to be in control of a tech company someday, and that would be him owning that. That's a different thing. So
Yeah.
for me, it's business ownership or real estate ownership, and probably both. I
Yeah.
think to really build wealth, you probably have to be a business owner, and then own real estate. That's my opinion.
Yeah, nah, I'm so aligned with that. Someone asked me the other day, "Are you invested in the stock market?" And I go, "I have no control, absolutely
Right.
no control." Now, Elon Musk, he has control over the stock market because he can say, "Hey, I'm buying something," and it'll shoot through the roof. Never mind, it'll dip, right?
It's,
I don't. I say, "Hey guys, I'm going to invest in whatever." Nobody gives a crap, right? It's not going to move the
right.
needle at all. What a
Right.
great piece of advice. Invest in what you could control. So we've got a few minutes left. Let me do this before we go any further. You wrote some books. Tell us about your books, man. Give a plug about your books.
So I've wrote a few books. One of them is Make Millions Selling Real Estate Presentations That Make Millions, and Sell Your Home in Any Market. So those are three books that I wrote, all published by Amicom. Um, where people can find me and learn more about coaching if they're a real estate agent or a brokerage owner is they can go to my coaching website, which is erealestatecoach.com, E like elephant. So we got a ton of tools there for people to check out.
Cool. All right. So there's a broker out there and they're like, you know what? I'd really like to grow to 225 agents or brokers. Like that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
They go to, say the website again.
erealestatecoach.com.
Okay. What kind of
Eli.
resources are you going to find there? Or is it one-on-one? Is it online courses? What does it look like?
So for brokers that join, what happens is they get their entire brokerage gets access to a coaching platform that I put together for agents. So if you're looking for your agents to grow their productivity and attract more agents, they all get plugged in. But then you as a broker are with me twice a month in a group setting of other brokers from around the country. So we're in a group setting, group coaching kind of environment. We spend an hour together of guided coaching, and then the biggest part of this is accountability coaching. At the end, we use a kind of a scrum management method. So we do a sprint, and at the end, we say, okay, what is everybody going to do for the next 2 weeks? Like, what's your commitment? I'm gonna rebuild my marketing department. We're gonna rebuild our website. We're gonna do whatever. I'm gonna recruit 5 people. Then when we come back 2 weeks later, everybody raises their hand and they say, what'd you get done? And now you're facing the group, not just me as a coach, but the entire group. It's like facing the team. And it just helps people elevate really, really rapidly what they're doing. It's super fun. And we have just a good time. It's great fun watching everybody grow together.
Yeah. So thank God you didn't have a heart attack, right? You went 3 times in and the doctor's like, dude, you got a good heart. All right. So you got a good heart and you're going to be in the game for a long time. But 20, 30, 40 years, however long down the line, you and I are sitting on a rocking chair, drinking some whiskey or whatever. And we're looking back and we go, we did it. What is that mile marker for you where you're like, I did it, kid?
I think this company that I'm running is my high point of achievement in the real estate brokerage business. I don't have an aspiration to go rebuild another company because I've done it twice. And the second time I did it better than the first time. Yeah. So I think that's my high point for real estate brokerage, ownership. I would like to say that I have also built in my lifetime a successful group of RV parks. So that's my next big challenge. And continue my coaching and hopefully to see some of these brokerages that I've helped coach grow and expand, because I get a lot of excitement and joy of just watching that happen.
Yeah, I could tell you love coaching. That's one of your favorite things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it.
Have you read the book $1 Trillion Coach? Bill something. It's a really good book for if you have a coach's heart. He coached a bunch of tech companies, Silicon Valley and such like that. It's a good book. It's $1 Trillion Coach.
I'll read it. $1 Trillion Coach. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, you're welcome. That just came to mind. One other question, kind of personal question. I grab your phone and I scroll through your playlist, top played song. Let's just say you had the same phone for the last 20 years, and I find the song that you've played the most in the last 20 years. What would that song be?
Definitely be Def Leppard, probably Photograph, or one of those. I'm definitely a Def Leppard guy. Yeah.
All right, sing it for us.
No,
I'm just kidding. Do not sing that for us.
No, what happened?
All right, cool. All right, so during this interview, we talked a lot about deals, how people can find you, some of the cool things that you're doing. What questions should I have asked you that I screwed up and did not ask you?
Well, you asked a lot of good questions. You're a very, very good interviewer. I don't know. I think you covered a lot of ground there, man. I don't know that there's a great question you missed. I think for new agents that are entering the business, which I get a lot of questions around new agents, like what can I do to rise quickly, I guess. Mm-hmm. My advice to them is the number one thing you can do is to focus in on your sphere of influence as fast as possible, grow that database, because 5 years after you enter the business, you're going to wish you had done that, because it's the number one thing missed by most agents is not growing that database and not tackling that properly. So that may be a good question.
Okay. So when it comes to building your sphere of influence and the niche, right? You're gotta have your niche.
Right.
Give me one piece of advice on each of those.
So sphere of influence, you have to use CRM technology, right? Yeah. So CRM is absolutely critical. I mean, we're transferring over and starting to use Salesforce in our company. So, whatever you're going to use, don't look for perfection. They're all flawed, every single one of them. People get hung up on this doesn't have this feature. It doesn't matter. 99% of what you're going to use inside CRM is it's going to show me the phone number, of the client and when I should contact them next, and then we'll have a drip campaign. All of them have that. Right. Yeah. So I don't need to worry about perfection. So that would be on the Sphere side, got to have CRM, and I got to be using it every single day. It's got to be up on my computer, my number one go-to thing. If I'm looking at the Fortune 500 companies of America, all of the salespeople that are making $200,000, $300,000 a year are required to use CRM every day. So we should have the same requirement. What was the second half of your question? That was it. Sphere?
Niche. No, niche.
Niche. Oh, niche. I think for niche, you got to go with your path, what your passion is. So if my passion is waterfront properties or golf properties or, something rural and, building, whatever, find what you're passionate about. Don't do it for the money. Do it for the passion. The money will follow.
Yeah. I got to ask this.
Yeah.
But as a generalist, look at all the money I'm leaving on the table. I could do residential. I could do commercial. I could work with investors. Right? A new agent.
Yeah.
I'm a new agent. I'm like, dude, look how many opportunities I have out there. Convince me of the niche.
I actually think that a new agent should be a generalist in the beginning. Cool. And I believe that. And then they should, especially if you're in a community like mine, if you're in a population base, a smaller population base, 80,000, 100,000, very difficult for a new agent to come in and say, I'm going to specialize in new construction. They'll crash and burn and fail immediately. Or I'm going to be a commercial specialist. They've kind of got to do it all, and then gently guide their business to that direction. I want to be a luxury specialist. Great. I'm going to start going into luxury. I'm going to grow that over the next 5 years. A great analogy to this is I graduate medical school. What do? I'm going to go work as an intern in the hospital, and I'm going to be a generalist. I'm going to be an intern. Then when I get out of there, maybe I go, go specialist. So I think that it's kind of the same thing. Get your legs under you, then you go deeper into specialization.
Super cool. One more time, where can people go to find you?
E as an elephant, real estate coach, erealestatecoach.com. And also you can find me with that tag on any social media as well.
What does the E stand for?
Electronic.
Super cool. Yeah. All right. So fellow deal makers in the audience, thanks for listening in. As always, reach out to our guests, say thanks for being on the show. If you're a broker or an agent, you're looking to grow your business and do better, be more profitable, better production, reach out to our guests and say, hey, I heard you on the Deal Scout and want to do a deal with you. That's the purpose and mission of the show. And now, if you're looking at a deal or working on a deal and you'd like to talk about it here on the Deal Scout, head over to thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, maybe get you on the show next. Till then, we'll talk to you all on the next episode. Bye, everybody.